I remember that night I launched Facebook from that little dorm in Kirkland House. I went to Noakes with my friend KX, and I remember telling him clearly that I was excited to help connect the Harvard community, but one day someone would connect the whole world. The thing is, it never even occurred to me that that someone might be us. We were just college kids. We didn't know anything about that. There were all these great big technology companies with all these resources, and I just assumed one of them would do it. But this idea was so clear to us that all people want to connect.
Well, why don't we start with just the early days of Facebook? Tell us what it was like when you started it.
Sure. So, for me, the thing that I was really fascinated by, and always have been, is people, right, and how people work. When I was in college, I studied psychology and computer science. And one of the things that you learn when you study psychology is that there are all these parts of the brain which are geared just towards understanding people, right? Understanding language, how to communicate with each other, understanding facial expressions, emotions, processing. Yet when I looked out at the internet, right, in 2004, which is when I was getting started, you can find almost anything else that you wanted, right? You can find news, movies, music, reference materials, but the thing that mattered the most to people, which was other people and like understanding what's going on with them, which just wasn't there, right? And people have this deep thirst to understand what's going on with those around them, and there were probably 10 other things like that I built when I was at Harvard before I actually got around to building the first version of Facebook that kind of added a lot of these things together. I built the first version of Facebook because it's something that my friends and I wanted to use at Harvard, a directory and a way to connect with the other people around us. And I didn't think at all that it was going to be a company, but we just kind of followed what people wanted, and that led us to expand it to all these other schools and eventually beyond schools. And to, at some point, once we'd hired a bunch of people, we decided to turn it into a company and go for this mission of connecting the world.
A couple years in, some big companies wanted to buy us. I didn't want to sell. I wanted to see if we could connect more people. Nearly everyone else wanted to sell. Without a sense of higher purpose, this was their startup dream come true, and it tore our company apart. After one particularly tense argument, one of my close advisors told me if I didn't agree to sell the company right now, I would regret that decision for the rest of my life. Relationships were so frayed that within a year or so, every single person on our management team was gone. That was my hardest time leading Facebook. I believed in what we were doing, but I felt alone. And worse, it was my fault. I wondered if I was just wrong, an imposter, a 22-year-old kid who had no idea how things actually worked. Now, years later, I understand that is how things work when there's no sense of higher purpose. So it's up to all of us to create it so we can all keep moving forward together. I'm here to tell you that finding your purpose isn't enough. The challenge for our generation is to create a world where everyone has a sense of purpose. But it's not enough to have that purpose yourself. You also have to create a sense of purpose for others. And I found that out the hard way. You see, my hope was never to build a company. I wanted to have an impact. Purpose is that feeling that you are a part of something bigger than yourself, that you are needed, and that you have something better ahead to work for. Purpose is what creates true happiness. Today, I want to talk about purpose. One of my favorite stories is when JFK went to go visit the NASA Space Center, and he saw a janitor holding a broom, and he asked him what he was doing, and the janitor replied, "Mr. President, I'm helping put a man on the moon."
I always think that the most important thing that entrepreneurs should do is pick something they care about work on it, but don't actually commit to turning it into a company until it's working. And I think that if you look at the data of like the very best companies that have gotten built, I actually think a tremendous percent of them have been built that way, and not from people who decided up front that they wanted to start a company. You know, for anyone who's had the experience of actually building a company, you know that you go through some really hard things along the way. And I think part of what gets you through that is believing in what you're doing and knowing that what you're doing is really delivering a lot of value for people. And that's, I think, how the best companies end up getting made.
Well, let me tell you a secret. No one does when they begin. Ideas don't come out fully formed. They only become clear as you work on them. You just have to get started. J.K. Rowling got rejected 12 times before she finally wrote and published Harry Potter. Even Beyonce had to make hundreds of songs to get Halo. If I had to know everything about connecting people before I got started, I never would have built Facebook. Movies and pop culture just get this all wrong. The idea of a single eureka moment is a dangerous lie. It makes us feel inadequate because we feel like we haven't had ours yet. And it prevents people with seeds of good ideas from ever getting started in the first place. It's really good to be idealistic, but be prepared to be misunderstood. Anyone working on a big vision is going to get called crazy, even if you end up right. Anyone taking on a complex problem is going to get blamed for not fully understanding it, even though it's impossible to know everything up front. Anyone taking initiative will always get criticized for moving too fast, because there's always someone who wants to slow you down. In our society, we often don't take on big things because we're so afraid of making mistakes that we ignore all the things wrong today if we do nothing. The reality is, anything we do today is going to have some issues in the future. But that can't stop us from getting started. So what are we waiting for? It is time for our generation-defining great works.
If you think about it, you know, I started the company when I was 19, right? So I can't institutionally believe that experience is that important, right? Or else I would have a hard time reconciling, you know, myself, right, and the company. So, you know, we invest in people who we think are just really talented, even if they haven't done that thing before. And, you know, that applies to people who are fresh out of university, as well as, you know, people like, you know, the CFO who took the company public had not taken a company public before, right? And a lot of his background was in, you know, production, development at Genentech before. So, you know, just focus on really talented people. So we have this 10-year roadmap.
That was great.
You know, 3 of the big changes that we want to see in the world. And we're focused on 3 things. Connectivity, right? So getting everyone in the world on the internet. So I think connecting everyone is really a key thing, which is going to be great for people around the world. The next one is AI. I think that's just going to unlock so much potential in so many different domains. And you know, we use it at Facebook for a lot of different things, for showing people content that they're going to find more meaningful, for making sure that you connect with the people you actually care about on the service. And then, you know, the next thing that I always think is going to make a big difference is virtual reality and augmented reality. And that, I think, is just going to help people, you know, be more creative, experience what other people are feeling much more immersively than we even can through video and things like that today. So I'm really excited about that trend as well. In a world that's changing so quickly, the biggest risk you can take is not taking any risk. If you are stagnant and you don't make those changes, then I think you're guaranteed to fail.